I'd like to welcome you to another of our critical conversations in 2024. Today we're going to be talking about the current state of Orange County's media landscape. We've got a wonderful panel of media experts to discuss today's topic and delve into the generational shift in the media industry and the impact and way folks around Orange County receive information. You know, we're honored and humbled to partner with OC World for today's program. OC World is an award-winning nonprofit multimedia production company founded in 2021 by Scott Hayes, Emmanuel Gomez. Scotty, wave. You're going to learn more about Scott here and interact with him in a little bit. They produce a weekly public affairs show that broadcasts to 15 million people on KLCS PBS. KLCS PBS is a must-carry television station. The extra cameras you see around the room, for anyone that's been to any of our programs, that's because this program is going to be filmed and will be aired on a future OC World program date. Now, before we get to our panel, please join me in thanking our title sponsor for the fourth consecutive year, UCI and UCI Health. Let's give them a big applause. And please join me in thanking all of our OC Forum ongoing sponsors. You'll see them rotate on the screens. It's their generous support that allows us to continue to bring you these interesting conversations. Well, when we were planning today's program, we were determined to bring some of the most talented and gifted media minds on the stage for this discussion, and it starts with our wonderful guest moderator. She's in her third year as the Vice President of Communications for the Orange County Business Council, after serving as the Communications and Policy Manager for the County of Orange's Social Service Agency. Please give a warm OC Forum welcome to Lizz Mishreki.
All right, it's all yours. Hi, everyone. Welcome. John, thank you, and thank you to your board of directors for letting me serve in this role. It really is, it is humbling. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. Thank you for joining us. I'm Lizz Mishreki, Vice President of Communications at Orange County Business Council, and I will be your moderator for today. If you've ever been to an OC Forum, you know they're filmed, and just like John said, we're doing that today, so that's what makes today unique, is that today's program will be televised on KLCS PBS, a public television station. And that'll be next month, so keep an eye out for when that happens. And we have Scott Hayes in the back there with OC World. Thank you for the collaboration on that, Scott. We appreciate it. I'm here today because this is a topic close to my heart and also my work. It's what I went to school for, public relations major. I don't know if anyone else wants to raise their hand out there. All right. But a lot has changed, a lot. And that's what we're here to talk about today. Where we've been, where we are today, and where we're going. So I think many of us in this room can agree there is no shortage of news. Yet, right? And fill in the blank however you'd like to. We're also in the most Hispanic state in the nation. Yet. And Orange County is the largest Vietnamese population outside of Vietnam, yet, okay? So today our panel will shed light on how to best navigate these changes in demographics as well as the media landscape. So with that, I'd like to introduce our esteemed panel. Please come up as I call your name. So first joining us today is Gustavo Arellano. Gustavo is a columnist for the Los Angeles Times. He covers Southern California, the West, and beyond. Before joining the LA Times, Gustavo was an investigative reporter for 15 years and an editor for 6 years at OC Weekly. And he wrote a column also called Ask a Mexican, which I absolutely love. Thank you so much. And he's also the author of Taco USA, How Mexican Food Conquered America. So Gustavo is the son of Mexican immigrant parents, one of whom came to the United States in the trunk of a Chevy. So ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Gustavo. Joining Gustavo is Ashley Alvarado, Vice President of Community Engagement and Strategic Initiatives at LAist, part of Southern California Public Radio, broadcasting digitally and also at KPCC 89.3 FM. In her role, Ashley oversees community and audience engagement and is actively involved in the journalism community by serving on various boards, including the National Advisory Board of Pointer. Under her leadership, Southern California Public Radio has won the Gather Award for Engaged Journalism Portfolio not once, not twice, but 3 times, 2019, 2020, and 2022. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Ashley. Next joining us is Todd Harmonson, Senior Editor of the Orange County Register and one of the lead editors for the Southern California News Group. Yay! An award-winning journalist, Todd has spent most of his career reporting on sports, including being the sports editor for the Register. He currently serves as the president and chairman of the board of the all-volunteer, I love this group, Todd, the California Scholastic Press Association, which runs one of the longest-running high school journalism workshops in the country. So, thank you. His work has earned him recognition from the Associated Press sports editors, the Orange County Press Club, and also the Cal State Fullerton as an inductee of their Communications Wall of Fame in 2017. Thank you for joining us, Todd. Finally, rounding out our panel is Reiff. Thank you, Rick. Editor-at-large of the Orange County Business Journal and host and producer of public affairs programs. Rick has been with the Orange County Business Journal since 1990, and with more than 30 years of journalism experience covering Southern California, Rick is a 4-time Golden Mike winner, 3-time Emmy nominee, and the 2018 recipient of the Orange County Press Club's Lifetime Achievement Award. So thank you, Rick, for joining us. You. All right. Well, again, thank you for joining us today. We're really happy that you're here. Am I on? Yes. Am I okay? Okay, good. Thank you, Gustavo. All right. We have a lot of ground to cover in a short amount of time. But before we jump in, I'd like to, again, just remind you that this is being televised, but one of the cool things that we're doing, something a little bit different, is we're going to be having you ask questions, if you want, after each question to the panelists. So after they're done answering a question, we're going to open it up, and you might see Scott back there, who will walk around with a microphone. Please give your name and organization if you want. You don't have to, but you get to ask your questions in real time, I guess you could say. So if you're more comfortable, though, waiting till the end when we have our Q&A, that's fine too. So, alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. Think of me, I don't know, as your subway conductor, I guess, getting from point A to point B in time. I want to be mindful of all of your time, getting you back to your work and your families, so we'll go ahead and get started. One of the things I want to do right now, though, is really informal, and that is I want to do a quick survey of the audience, just really super quick. Raise your hand if you're responsible for telling your organization's story. If you're either you lead or you support the role of your organization in telling their story. Wow. Okay, that's a good number. Thank you. Maybe you're in-house or at a public relations agency or a consultant. Okay, awesome. And then raise your hand if you're in the nonprofit sector. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, because we know all these folks up here, so I wanted you all to get an idea of who you're having a coffee chat with today, so to speak. So anyway, well, thank you so much again for joining us all. I want to start first with a general, like a state of the media in Orange County question. So up here, we do have radio and print represented. We have for-profit media as well as nonprofit. So nonprofit newsrooms and for-profit newsrooms. So given that, over the years, surveys have told us that public trust in American media and journalism has declined. Include their misinformation, layoffs at media outlets, the infusion of AI have also added concern, probably, for how reliable is this information? So focusing on Orange County, what is the general state of Orange County media? And Todd, I'd like to start with you first, and then maybe Ashley next.
I want to clarify that we are not among the nonprofits, even though we're at the Orange County Register. Many people would think we are, but no, we're not. It's a different state. I've been doing this now at the Register for 26 years with the company, and I've seen wild changes from a robust newsroom there on Grand Avenue in Santa Ana to now most of our people are working from home, and we've got a small office just down the street in Irvine. But we're still doing the job. We do it with fewer people, and I think that's the same at every news organization across the country right now. You're trying to fight the same battles without as robust an army to do it. And that's scary on some fronts. It's a challenge that I'm still willing to take every day. But I think there are people out there who know that it's a time to try to take advantage of the opportunity because there's not as many of us watching. There are, the people who are greedy, the people who are corrupt, who understand that there aren't as many eyes on them as there are before. And that's scary. That's kind of disheartening at times that we know some people can get away with things that they couldn't before. And we didn't get everything before, right? Bell happened when the Times still had a pretty robust newsroom, excuse me. But it's a lot tougher now to cover the 34 cities of Orange County without a really robust local team to do that. The local team we've got is great, though. I love them, and they're doing a terrific job. So.
Thank you, Todd. Ashley, how about you from the nonprofit perspective?
So one of the things that if you listen to our radio station, 89.3, something that you'll hear throughout the day is that we are losing journalists across the country at a pace that is faster than we're losing coal miners. To give an actual number to that, that's more than 300,000 journalists in the last 20-something years. It is significant. And so when we talk about everything that you're mentioning, and who's watching, we're getting hit across the board. I'm looking to you to fact check me, but there were hundreds of journalists from the LA Times in Orange County, when our executive editor was here covering transportation, and you don't see that kind of presence. And so there's a real need to make sure that, that we're doubling down. And I'm very mindful of this conversation. We're in the middle of voluntary buyouts at my organization right now. The challenges, whether you're in the for-profit sector or the nonprofit sector, are real. At the same time, the need is so pronounced in Orange County that we are actually redirecting some of our resources to make sure that we have a bigger presence here. You all deserve it. We also see the response to it. So, we talk about there not being a shortage of news, but maybe there being a shortage of newsrooms and journalists who can produce it. When you do the journalism right and you're making sure that you're being where people are, you see that response. So, for anybody who has Apple News on your phone, when we do a story about Orange County, Apple News takes it basically every time. And those stories are well read. When we produce stories on our website or on air, we get really great feedback. Yeah, and so it's something where there's a real need.
Yeah, no, sorry, I said podcast Imperfect Paradise when you did the whole story up in Fullerton.
I'm just also saying you're my favorite Larry Mantle guest. For anybody who listens to Air Talk, you have the best chemistry.
God bless them, man.
Gustavo, would you like to say something else?
Yeah, the state of Orange County media is crap. It's been crap, and it's the fault of everyone in Orange County. That's what it is. The Orange County Register, God bless Todd, he's amazing. He's doing the miracles that he can with a shell of what the Orange County Register used to be. My paper, the Los Angeles Times, we have no one covering Orange County as a dedicated beat. Yes, I cover Orange County as a columnist, but I'm also, they mostly have me in Los Angeles nowadays. The paper that I used to work for, OC Weekly, of course, gone. OC Metro, gone. Orange County Business Journal has always had its lane, and it does a great job at its lane, but still it's very limited. My big issue with the state of Orange County media, sorry, I'm humming, is that there is almost no one left who tries to weave the narrative of Orange County together. I'm glad all of you, since you're seeing that there is no one telling your stories, you're taking the initiative to tell your stories. I'm not gonna be one of those people hating on PR folks or anything like that. You're taking to social media and all that, but all of you are just focused on what you do. No one is trying to tell that big story. LAist, great reporting. Only a couple stories still treats Orange County as like ¿cómo se dice? A bureau. If you don't know what I said, learn Spanish already. Same thing with KCRW, where that's my public radio station nowadays. Who is going to tell the story of Orange County? We're 3.2 million people. There's so many stories here. Do we not care about Orange County? And the saddest thing of all, we're also one of the richest places in the United States. Where's the rich people trying to create something to try to tell that narrative that's not just always about burnishing themselves? So yeah, Orange County media is crap, despite those of us in the media who are trying. We're trying. Oh God, we're trying.
Thank you, Gustavo. Rick?
No.
Since Gustavo started, let me pile on the LA Times. No, just kidding.
Go for it.
Not yet, but in a way, yes, there are fewer journalists for sure, but we don't have to have as many journalists now. I think what we have to have are good journalists. And when I say we don't need as many journalists, think of the changes that have happened. Easy example, newspapers used to employ lots of photographers. When it comes to news anymore, the photographer is the first person with a cell phone who happens to be on the scene. That becomes the photographer. A lot of what journalists used to do, okay. Oh, that's much better. Okay, should I start over? No, much of what journalism used to be was to be an intermediary between experts and the reader. And nowadays, people go online. You want health news. You don't turn to a newspaper and read the health column anymore. You just go online and John Hopkins or whatever, and you're getting the information. So there's a lot of journalism that isn't as important. What I think the tragedy is, if there's any place where there should be, if not more journalism, better journalism and better covered journalism, is on the local level. And so much of the national media now, it's all about the dollars. And so to chase dollars, you have to give people what they want to hear. So Fox is never going to do anything good, say anything good about Biden. CNN will never say anything good about Donald Trump because their audience doesn't want to hear that. But those same people, I believe, that when it comes to local news, they're not that interested. They're willing to, put the football helmets aside, and we kind of have the same interest. Give it to us straight. Give it to us factually. Tell us what's going on. And unfortunately, I see too much in the local media where they're trying to parrot the big boys, and that but there's no dollars there for that, and I think that you're much smarter trying to emphasize the old journalistic principles like fairness, accuracy, perspective, and I do believe that includes objectivity, which unfortunately among too many journalists today is considered an outdated principle.
Thank you.
If I could jump in, the one thing I would add with that is when you talk about the trends and trust in journalism, where it's really gone down is at the national level. And so when people are asked about who they trust, local journalism is trusted. It's just not necessarily paid for.
Yeah. Thank you.
UCI, real quick. UCI had its Department of Social Ecology had a poll last year that did the Orange County poll. It was great. Dr. John Gould, I don't know if he's here, but did a really deep dive into it. And it showed still that there is a lot of trust in the local media for coverage of Orange County. I love that the Register was the #1 source as an individual
That's what's
source.
left.
You know, local TV as a group, all local TV was the #1 source for people in Orange County to get their news. But then the Register was the one single source. And the Times was way up there, and public radio. These things matter.
Yeah, thank you guys. We're going to have a lot to talk about still. So thank you, because you're already touching on some of the topics here. So let's move on. And first of all, I don't know if anybody has a question. Scott, one there and one over here.
Hi, how can we support more journalism, more local journalism, aside from subscribing? What else can we do as like lay people that aren't journalists to try to get more local journalists hired? I'd love any ideas you have. We already subscribe, but what else can we be doing?
Well, there's state legislation that is moving forward right now that if you're interested in it, you could talk to your legislators that would protect local journalism from the aggregators of the world. And right now that's a big thing. Google is pushing back against it and saying it's going to stop serving up news from California sites as a way to try to get us to back off as an industry. But this is something that if Google had to pay to get what we produce, right now it doesn't. You understand that, they just take. That would support the hiring of more journalists. And that's what the mandate would be in that legislation. So that's a huge thing.
Thank
Liz,
you.
Liz,
I would, go ahead.
No, it's me over here. Liz,
Oh,
thank
Scott,
you. We have another
sorry.
question.
Sorry about that. Go ahead. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm Henry Mendoza. I'm a board member here. It's a question. It's a thought and a question. So I do a real scientific poll every Monday at our staff meeting, and I ask the staff, you know, what do they know what's going on? And these are the younger. I'm older, and they know nothing. So, and I ask them, where do you get your news from? And they get it from Apple, whatever, on a national level. They know nothing about local. That's an issue, and I think a problem, because also my staff, they need to know, I'm a CPA, they need to know where we're doing business. So I guess my point is how is that gonna get solved? Because either when they come to school, that they need to be aware of what's going on in their surroundings, or have their boss, like me, browbeat them every Monday and say, you guys know nothing, you know? So I guess it's a point, and it's a question, is how do you crack that? And how do you get them to just not read what's fed to them on a national level and know what's going on here locally?
I'm
Thank
happy
you, Henry.
to jump in and say, you know, I think we spend a lot of time wondering where the readers or the listeners went and being frustrated that people no longer have media literacy, but we don't as an industry spend enough time building community literacy. So really understanding our audiences, understanding their information needs and their behaviors. In some ways, it's about saying, you know, do you have an off-platform strategy? Meaning, are you figuring out ways to work with Google Discover? Also, to the question before and on Google, just look at what's happening in Canada with Google, and that can tell you some of the real concerns that journalists have. But going back to that, you know, recognizing, okay, these are the stories that resonate. These are the platforms where people are engaging. The idea of news fatigue is one we hear a lot too, but understanding actually the nuances of news avoidance. So it might be that somebody really can't stand getting bad news in the morning, but they have a way that they want to get curated information through a newsletter. And so we have to really be open to thinking differently about how we are engaging folks. And the last point I would make on that is that newsrooms, you know, watch any like journalism movie and there's that scene with the editors around the table. We keep hoping for relevance, but we have to design for relevance. And that means having newsrooms that look like the communities that you serve. It means really getting less precious about the ways that you're delivering information and rethinking some of the assumptions that you have about your audiences or potential audiences.
That's a good point. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. We'll get around, I promise, because you're already touching on things, and I love that, things that we're going to talk about later. Let's move on. Thank you for those questions. and you kind of touched on this. I mean, we know there's a shortage. I mean, there is no shortage of news. However, newsrooms are shrinking. We've talked about that. You've shared on that. It's probably because of this antiquated model, right? Advertising dollars are what keep the news outlet going. That's what keeps the lights on. That's what makes payroll. But when those advertising dollars disappear, and I get it, for the nonprofit model, it's a little bit different. It's donors
but we feel it too. I mean,
Okay.
My grandfather was an ads guy for the Register Guard in Eugene, Oregon, like 50 years ago. And you come into the nonprofit space and you go, we've got memberships and we've got philanthropy. Well, we have underwriting and corporate sponsorship too. And when we talk about the way that newspapers were affected with advertising and classifieds, there are ways that that's hitting public media and nonprofits too. When you think about the transition from being on one single platform where people are primed to become paying members, although folks should know that the average cultivation is 8 years from discovery to financial support. So it's not like, oh, I really like that show, I'm going to give them all my money, to then moving to digital where you're talking about dimes or pennies to the dollar that you would have for newspapers in the past or on-air underwriting spots.
What is the solution then?
For us, it's moving the model dramatically to more of a subscription-based one. Digital subscriptions are a huge part of what we're doing now, and they've been growing at a great rate for several years. We're getting more people reading what we do than ever before. It's just they're doing it in a different way. We don't expect that everybody's going to have a newspaper delivered to their doorstep, and then we just assume that they happen to have read that. We do an analytics-based evaluation of what people are reading, and we know what cities they care about, what topics they care about, and then we try to meet that need. But yeah, people are subscribing. Our print subscription base is still a lot stronger than anybody would probably assume, but it's the other end that's growing to meet the need, where advertising has tapered off.
Sure.
But we're good.
These are just adjustments that are being made because technology is
Keeps
forcing
changing.
changes to be made. And I really think my own feeling is that in the long term, you won't have you may not even have you won't have ads running in papers. You won't have trees being cut down. Basically, there will be a direct communication between journalists and their audience, or groups that will aggregate journalists. But Substack's a good example of that. There's lots of journalists on Substack. I don't think I subscribe. I think they just ask for a donation. But Paul Hodgins has a site called Culture OC. Used to be the art writer for the Orange County Register. They're doing great work
and then
online. And then I get Mark Wicker, who I think is the best sports writer in Southern California. Used to be with the Register, and now he's got his own site. So,
By the way, Mark was supposedly retired, and he writes every day on Substack.
Right. Yeah,
That's funny.
An inspiration to some of us. But anyway, these. It's kind of changing, and it's going to be really rough for the legacy media. So far, the Orange County Business Journal, we're doing great. Our readers still like to get the glossy publication every week, but there's going to be a change. And again, I think that the opportunities for journalists are there if they would really listen to their potential audience and go back to journalistic principles.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you. We touched a little bit earlier on the changing demographics here in Orange County, not just the media landscape, but Orange County has a thriving community of several cultural ethnicities and backgrounds, some that lack news coverage. We already touched on that a little bit. How does each of your organization, and maybe you guys can decide who the two of you want to answer, how do you approach storytelling about Orange County's diverse communities?
Well, you have to start by knowing that Orange
Knowing
County
who
is
they are.
diverse. If you live only in your bubble, whatever the bubble may be, maybe it be Santana, Mission Viejo, Yorba Linda, I'm not going to pick on any particular city, but if you're not curious about the rest of the county, then you're going to assume, oh, Orange County is this, Orange County is that. So that's the importance of journalists to go out there and push yourself out. When I was the editor of OC Weekly, one of the great ways that I was able to learn about Orange County, I'm born and raised in Anaheim, but one of the ways I was able to learn it was by being a food critic. Oh shoot, Little Saigon. Oh shoot, there's a little Pakistani enclave right on Brookhurst that's right next to the Islamic Society of Orange County. Oh shoot, Little Arabia in Garden Grove. Oh my God, there's like a bunch of South Africans in Irvine and Lake Forest and all that. And if you don't know what any of this is, then either the media that you're paying attention to, they were not covering that, or you were not reading OC Weekly. So I think what you need to have people push themselves out of their comfort zone. And then to what we were talking about earlier, as a publication, you have to be able to learn how to, I hate to use the word monetize, but you have to make yourself indispensable to the readers. I would say that the nonprofit media is far better at it than legacy media. So KPCC, people love KPCC. KCRW, people love KCRW. Does anyone really love the Orange County Register? Does anyone really love the LA Times? I hate to say, no. They'll read us, but do they actually love us? No. So these Substack, people love Substackers. You know, I subscribe to my Substackers as well, and I read them, and like they become part of that. But that's what you need. I know it sounds really cheesy, but think about it. What are the institutions, organizations that you love? I know someone used to be from Disney's here. People love Disney. You need to create that love.
I always joke because when we do live events, people come up and hug me. I'm not on air and I'm not a hugger. But it's because I show up over and over and over again. And so to your point, I think having fluency in the community, being present, I recognize that I'm at an organization that now goes by LAist and is doubling down on Orange County coverage. And that feels like those are things that are at odds. But the folks that we have who are reporting on and in Orange County, many of them were born and raised here, have previous experience in Orange County, and are building on that. The one thing I want to make sure to point out too is understanding the community, ethnic, and language media landscape in whether you're talking about LA County or Orange County, recognizing when you're producing great journalism, but you're not the trusted messenger in a particular community, how can you support partnerships and get to looking at like the information ecosystem as opposed to your one organization. And the last very quick thing, there's a new, for those who know, the Knight Foundation, which funds a lot of journalism. At their recent conference, they talked about getting philanthropy to move at the pace of journalism, which I really appreciated because for the near term, philanthropy is going to play a very big role, whether you're at a nonprofit or a legacy publication.
By the way, I'll never give Ashley grief about her company's name as long as that team that plays at the Big A is called the Los Angeles Angels. So. Anybody know the Spanish, by the way? But yeah, I think for us, it's key that a lot of news organizations, especially following 2020, said, okay, it's time to suddenly wake up and do some things on the DEI front. And we certainly increased our efforts during that time, but it also is not just this person does it and everybody else gets to forget about it. It's a newsroom-wide approach to look at our community and report on what is happening, report on what people care about. And that is all over from, all the way to San Clemente up to Brea and, Los Alamitos. And in those 34 cities, we are wildly different. There are, I think, so many opportunities for amazing stories that we haven't told over the years that we're really pushing on now. And that means some of the stories that we told over and over aren't going to get told right now, okay? But we've got a county, for instance, we just had an Orange County Hall of Fame come out last year without a single Latino on it.
Who cares about Latinos in Orange County?
Yeah.
No one ever has until recently.
Yeah. If Sylvia Mendez isn't on the next class, we got an issue.
Sylvia Mendez, yeah.
How about questions in the audience? Steve.
Yeah, thank you very much, Liz. And I probably don't need that, Scott, but Steve Sherman, Sherman 360. And a question I wanted to ask all of you, because you touched on it, Ashley, a moment ago. You used the word trust. And it certainly seems to be at the essence of this conflict between who and whether we're even interested in media, because we can't trust media. We hear that from the highest levels in this country. They can't be trusted. It's all fake news and so forth. How do we recapture, and I'm someone who started my career, first 15 years with the Register proudly, and then the LA Times, in newsrooms, a reporter and editor. It's just really important to me to see media and news in whatever sort of form move forward. But that trust factor, any one of you, how do we recapture that, and how do we build on it? How do you create that so that people come and follow you? Because you're doing some great work, all of you.
So I would say that listening and humility are two of the key ingredients. You know, we are an NPR affiliate, and NPR has definitely had a lot of attention on it of late. And making sure that we're taking that time to listen to folks, to invite folks. I lead these sessions called Feeding the Conversation. And it's where we have prompts, and journalists are there to listen, not to necessarily follow the instincts that we might have to really pick up on a thread and dive deep. And those include questions like, imagine a time that we or that mainstream media is getting your story right. What does it look like, and how do you recognize it? And then finding those times, even when there's somebody who might strike you as completely radicalized or, you know, not feeling, and to find the ways that you can have those bits of trust. I would say two very tactical things. There's an organization called Trusting News, and then there's another one called the Trust Project, and they give tools to journalists and to websites and news outlets to build trust indicators into the process. And so what are the things in which you can actually cue to somebody that this has been verified, or that you do know your community, that this is not AI generated. And with Trusting News in particular, they talk about understanding the dimensions of difference. So Joy Mayer, who is, nobody embodies that name better than her. You know, yesterday she was on LinkedIn, and I know there are a lot of LinkedIn fans in the room, saying, hey, you're a journalist. You've followed every moment of the Trump trial. Guess what? Most of your audiences haven't. So or your neighbors haven't. How do you approach that conversation with an understanding that we might geek out over all of this? Other people don't even know it's happening.
Well, let's bring this back to the local news because, and I think this idea of trust, I think you gain trust by being honest with people and by striving to be objective and to be fair. And almost every day I pick up something in the Times or Register that makes me want to climb up a wall, because I feel that the journalist has slanted the story. And I'm a journalist. I think the public out there, and I get this all the time from people, when I ask some folks, what would you like to, you know, if you were going to ask a question at this thing, they keep coming two things. Why is there less news now, or, you know, less news being covered? Why? It basically amounts to, why are the Times and Register shrinking? But then also facts. Whatever happened to facts? That's one of the FACTS, not FAX. But those facts are gone too. But anyway, you know, and so I just thought, just the other day, here's an example. Many of you probably heard about that controversy over the trans woman who wanted to compete in a surf competition in Huntington Beach. Okay. Now, the Register, I thought, actually did a good job in covering this. And here was their second sentence of this story, which I think was what a journalist should do, putting this story in the perspective. And the second sentence says, a two-day surf contest happening this weekend in Huntington Beach found itself at the center of a hotly debated topic, whether trans athletes should be allowed to compete in the gender division they identify with, or the gender they were born as, a question many sports organizers are facing as equality and fairness are argued among both sides. Okay, I thought, all right, now I can read on and, you know, see what the different people have. Here was the lead in the LA Times. Sasha Jane Lowerson, that's the person in question, just wanted to surf. That was their lead. Okay, well, first of all, that's factually incorrect. She didn't just want to surf, she wanted to compete. And she didn't want to just compete, but she wanted to compete by her identified gender and not her birth gender. And so to start the story that way, it immediately you're sympathizing with her position, I would argue subliminally, and less with the other side. The story then goes on and extensively quotes a transgender activist, never quoted anybody, with a different view, including many women who would consider themselves sympathetic to transgenderism, but they think when it comes to sports, there should be a difference, which, by the way, 2/3 of the American public feel that way. Not that that makes it right or wrong, but it's not an issue that's one-sided.
Rick?
And I just want to enter,
Okay.
Rick, all right? And here's the quote. And then they quote, very hype and sorry, "It's a Republican and religious agenda that's playing out and frankly harming people," okay? Now, I'm saying that that's a legitimate viewpoint and it belongs in a story. But when that is the entire story, I think some readers, I was upset by it. I wasn't so upset I'd cancel the LA Times, but I think there are people who would do that.
Thank you. Good point. We have a question here.
Hi, my name is Teresa Wright, and I'm from Little Saigon TV. And as you know, that Orange County is the largest Vietnamese populations. So as you know, the culture is defined by people, and also that the people, the cultures drive the behaviors, and it's always evolving. So for you to create the content, ethnic content, I learned that people trust in language. So have you ever worked with ethnic media locally in order to build trust in the community?
We have had Spanish language publications through the Register. Vietnamese language publications haven't been ones that we've run, certainly, but they're a big part of the Orange County landscape. We have had really good reporters who spoke Vietnamese. I've been without one for a while, and that's been a struggle. I just landed one as an intern this summer, and that's a step in the right direction. We need to start making those inroads better. It's got to be a focus for us. And then having the discussions with the local media that's already there, rather than trying to pretend like we know everything, is going to be an important step. But just even getting somebody who can help us talk to people who feel more comfortable speaking in their native language is a step we had to take. And I'm glad we're doing that finally.
That's important, but it's not necessary. You, as a reporter, need to go out there and talk to the people that are going to tell you what the stories are. And more importantly, you as a reporter need to do that, not advocacy, but the research to get it right. I'll give you an example. When I was at the OC Weekly, when I was the only person of color up until 2006, I wasn't just a token Latino reporter. I was a token Black reporter. I was a token Vietnamese reporter. I was a token Muslim reporter. In fact, my Muslim friends, we're talking about 2004, 2005, they're like, "Wow, you are just an amazing Muslim reporter." But I'm like, "I'm Catholic." But they said "No, but you tell our stories with the nuance and you're not treating us as terrorists like other publications are at the time." Do I speak Arabic? No. Do I speak Vietnamese? No, but I knew that it was important to do so. I think, and this is not a diversity pitch, by the way, I think if any publication wants to be essential to the community or the region that it covers, you need to have the people who know it. And a person who speaks Vietnamese is going to have far better understanding of Little Saigon than, say, myself. But it doesn't also always work out that way. So you as an editor, and I wouldn't just leave it on editors. This has to be on the reporters. I have to say, when I joined the OC Weekly, I saw also, at the time, we were mostly covering Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, Irvine. They weren't covering really Anaheim. They definitely were not covering Santana. Me as a reporter, okay, I'm new. Let me cover these communities, not because I'm Latino, but because I see an opportunity for me to be able to cover it. And by the way, they all happen to be Orange County communities, cities.
What I would say is when I'm coaching newsrooms, one of the things that I go back to a lot is do what you do best and partner on the rest. And so thinking about, I agree with everything that you've said. And going back to what I said before, there might be times where we're doing something and we recognize we can serve our existing audience, but we're going to do more service if we partner with a newsroom that's serving a specific audience. And so making sure that you're making those investments too.
Thank you, Ashley. That's a good point. Okay, let's talk about adapting change, still continuing in the media landscape. How do newsrooms and how have your newsrooms adapted to your platform, or adapted your platforms to continue to capture traffic? And you touched on this a little earlier, Ashley. Capture traffic with the continued rise of Google search and AI, because the rules are changing. But also at the same time, if that's changing, then how do you maintain trust in the increasingly fragmented media landscape? That's a balancing act.
Let me talk against trust. There's too much emphasis. Oh, we need to gain back the trust of readers. We need to gain back the trust of communities. Look, I've been a reporter now for 25 years, roughly. Very few people have ever trusted me. I've gotten hate from the left, from the right. It doesn't matter. Because if you write stories that matter, they will read you. They will read you. Like with OC Weekly, oh, no one can trust OC Weekly. They just spin a bunch of lies. Meanwhile, here comes all the things that we actually did to make Orange County a better place. I think trusting, I just find it such namby-pamby liberalism. Sorry, it's absolutely true. And it's also an excuse for publications to basically make it's an excuse for publications to excuse how weak their actual coverage is. It allows reporters to make up, oh, well, yeah, we can't do that because people don't trust us. No, go out there and tell great stories. If you tell great stories. So same thing with pivots. Oh, God, how many pivots have we lived through, all of us collectively? Oh, you got to go to, video. Now podcast. Oh, you have to game, what were the aggregators back in the days? Dig. Yeah. If you put a story on Dig, blah, blah, blah. The journalism landscape sadly tries to hitch its wagon. I'm going to mix up my metaphors here. Hitch its wagon to bubbles that always burst. Focus on the stories. If you tell the stories, because that's at the end what journalism should be. If we're talking about subscribers, readers, making money, you could be the most trusted organization on the planet, but if you tell boring stories, no one's going to follow you. Tell the damn stories that matter.
Yep, I agree. So platform-wise, the thing that convinced me that it's not as big a deal as we once made it is my 87-year-old father-in-law said, stop having the register delivered to my door unless you're going to put a magnifying glass with it. I'm going to read it on my tablet. It's a lot more convenient for me. I can blow up the type. I can bounce around. And he is not a tech guy, but he knows, okay, this is how I can get my news, and I want that news. And it's like, okay, if he can do it, anybody can do that. So we can just figure out, let's do the journalism. And people are going to get it on their phone. They're going to get it in the print edition. They're going to get the newsletters, or they're going to go through social media. Let's not sweat that stuff as much as what Gustavo says. Let's do the work well.
Do the work.
And then, to me, I will say the part of trust that matters to me is at least going out and talking to people. And anybody who starts a day hating me because I'm the senior editor of the Register, if they sit here and we'll talk and they understand I'm not the devil, I actually do care about what they think is important. It might not always make our front page or the homepage of our website, but I'm going to listen to them. And that part matters so much, that we're out there in the community. If everybody's just tied up in an office and never communicating, never going out into the field. Now, in 1 week span last year, I was with the Canyon Democrats and I think the Mission Viejo Republicans. Great audiences both, and had a lot of really good discussions. That was important.
Thank you, Todd. Ashley, you had some really good points when we were doing our prep call. You were talking about Google search and AI and how your news site has adapted. Can you touch on that briefly? And then we have a question from the audience.
Sure. I want to say that I both agree with what you both said, but we don't get to do the good journalism if we're not in business. And so that means that we have to kind of up our understanding of how the platforms are working or stealing from us, of how we're reaching or not reaching folks. And so figuring out the ways that we can make AI work for us, while also understanding the way that AI has the ability to undermine what newsrooms are trying to do. So we're actually rolling it out, I think this month, finally our policy on AI as an organization. So we'll use it. We'll use it to create alt text so that we can be more inclusive. We'll use it to look at SEO so that we're really making sure that our stories have the opportunity to be surfaced. But then we're also thinking about with Google, and of course it depends on how things go specifically with California, but we've done a lot of user needs, or kind of just trying to understand how people come to us, what they come to us for. And we've realized, there are some stories that do really well in search. Other stories that, other kinds of stories that people are more likely to share with other people, and making sure that you're spending that time to have that understanding so that you can be in the business. And to what you said before, how to monetize everything. One example might be for folks, and it was, we've got our live stream. We'll do Air Talk, a live stream of it on Instagram. On the road, yeah. But we'll do a live video on Fridays on Instagram. Well, Instagram is now deprioritizing live video. But YouTube loves it. So thinking about, okay, well, how do we basically, in this, well, people have already eaten, but like, how do we use the whole hog? How do we make sure that we're getting everything off the bone, and taking advantage of that?
I like that. We have a question right now.
Hello, Nadia Davis Lockyer. We've talked about funding, we've talked about structure, and we've talked about trust. And as someone who has observed the landscape over several decades, had a lot of different experiences in the media and observing it, it seems that the underlying theme that we're not getting to is a disconnect. You mentioned it a little bit, but there's a disconnect between media, what is seen, and what is happening under everybody's roof and what they're facing. The human stories, the human struggles. And I think across the board in all cultures and in all forums, there's common themes that would connect communities if we identified those and started talking about them in a real human, heart-based way more. So I'd like to know your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Who wants to go first?
Yeah, I mean, that is journalism at its finest. What I always used to tell when I was the editor of OC Weekly, I would tell my colleagues, how can you make someone in San Clemente, beach town, all the way down there, very conservative, how can you make someone in San Clemente care about what's happening up in La Habra? Very Latino, moderate, not as Democrat as people make it out to be, has a 562 area code, for crying out loud.
I have a 562 area code.
Oh my gosh, so how they're literally nothing against 562, but in Orange County we're 714 or 949 or what's 64? No, that's New York. The 657, whatever it is in Fullerton. But the point is, they're completely different. So how can you make someone care about that? And that is finding those common threads. Usually we call them human interest stories, but also you just have to find stories that, again, are going to resonate. Being with the Los Angeles Times, the last huge Orange County story I helped break was the Shohei Ohtani gambling translator scandal. We broke that story at the LA Times. We broke it. And that was something that crossed over from just the sports world to all of Orange County. I had my cousins threatening me, if Shohei goes to jail, we're going to kick your ass. Even my own cousins don't trust me. But the point is, that was more on the scandal side. But then on the trust side, one thing that I've done in my column, the Los Angeles Times, I've written a lot about my family. I've written about, for instance, my dad. And when they were starting to roll out the first COVID vaccines, my dad didn't want to take it because he thought he was going to get a chip in him. He said that the only people who got COVID were people with weak blood, or that people who were sad, and he was happy. He was stupid. Absolutely stupid. And myself as the oldest, I was able to convince him. So I did a whole column about that experience. Afterwards, we got hundreds of responses from people of all ethnicities saying, thank you for telling your story. I read your story, and ultimately my dad got the vaccine. I read your story to our parents, and they got convinced to take the vaccine. So telling those stories, and a great publication, they're going to tell all the stories. They're going to tell the investigations. They're going to tell the sports. They're going to tell the scandals, whatever it is. But they're also going to tell stuff. People could call it soft news. People call it human interest news. But what are the ones that connect us and that make people care? That goes with it as well.
So to this point, I would say that you do find something universal when you're willing to get really, really specific. And so that can be one family story. It can be one tale. I always remember the story of a woman who talked about being interned during World War II, and they were there, and she said, we knew the war was over when food started falling from the sky, and lipstick did too. We didn't know what the lipstick was, so we ate it. And there's that moment where you laugh and then you go, and it's that thing of going like, we have our different World War II stories, other war stories that we've heard, and that very, very specific thing got them. To what you clarified with your question, I was telling some folks, my 9-year-old and I are working tomorrow because we're doing an event for parents and little kids. And we had to cut off the RSVPs because we had 1,800 people RSVP. Because what's a universal experience or a near universal experience? Little kids and being bored on a Saturday. And so when you have those moments, those are really good entry points to some of the other kind of journalism that you might offer. And I agree about having the spectrum.
Thank you, Ashley. Yeah, there should be a common denominator, right? Somewhere. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, mental health, and those are some things that she's saying. If
we've got a story you'll see on Sunday about the cost of having kids and just how that is changing the whole dynamic of our region. And just on, if you have to make these tough choices, how many kids are you going to have? Are you going to have kids anymore? And I think that's something that, it's something that we're all facing. I know my kids right now are at that point in their lives, and they're not certain that they're going to do what we did.
All right, we have another question, and then we'll move on to our next question after this.
Hi, former journalist here, now in communications. My question is, what are you doing to attract younger subscribers, readers? Most of the people in this room are older than 30. Baby boomers, I see a lot of baby boomers here who have children, whether they're 20-something, 30-something. I have teenagers, and they're consuming media, their stories, via YouTube, TikTok, and also Instagram and other forums. What are you doing to attract those people so that you have news consumers in the future?
I just want to say, sorry, Todd, we are running short of time, but go ahead and answer, and I just want to make sure that we keep moving forward, so go ahead.
We go where they are. We don't expect that they're going to come to us and discover that we've got this great product. We're right now, okay, how can we make TikTok work for us? Is that even a possibility? But we've had good success, like with Instagram, telling Instagram stories that then lead people to our site. Maybe some will subscribe off of that. Maybe they'll just enjoy that one thing. It's something that we have our wins, and we have a social team and a whole digital team that is studying every opportunity that we could have to connect with new readers. Great that our readers are living longer and they're sticking with us, but we know we can't count on that forever. So we need to keep replenishing it.
Liz, I think we have one up here from Jeff.
One more? Okay.
Thank you. Similar question along with that. As I look at the stage, imagine OC Forum at 50. 20 years from now, who's going to be sitting on that stage talking about media, and where are they going to come from? I'm very interested in how you're working with education to develop the journalists of tomorrow, recognizing the challenges that your industry is facing.
I'm going to jump in. I run the California Scholastic Press Association high school journalism workshop. We've been doing it for 73 years. I'm not that old. But I was a student in the workshop, returned as a counselor, instructor, and now I'm the president and chairman of the board. I see dynamic, incredible young journalists who are coming through our workshop every year. I'm not afraid of having enough talent. I'm concerned about them having the jobs and having the places to go. Now, we've got amazing people out there. Laura Nelson at the LA Times is one of our vice presidents and one of our recent grads, and people like her are going to be running this business. That part's going to be great. We just need to make sure that we have places for them to work.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So I'm being told 10 minutes until through the end of the Q&A, right? Okay. All right. Let's get going here then. I have one last question, and then the next one is going to be like speed dating. So we're going to go down the row, 1 minute each. But this one we kind of touched on a little bit, and if we can keep this brief, because I think it's still important to ask. First of all, we know it's an election year. It's not a surprise. Each of your organizations, I'm sure, has a roadmap for what you're going to cover, a content calendar, so to speak, but that's not my question. My question is more about the how instead of the what. And by that I mean, how will your news outlets preserve democracy, build trust, and remain relevant with election coverage? And if you want to throw in among younger audiences for extra credit, feel free.
Yeah, so you just go find the elections that matter. My column yesterday was about an attempted recall of Anaheim Council member Natalie Rubalcaba, who I went to high school with, as I disclose in my column, and just what the bigger story is, which I characterize as the eternal civil war that Democrats have between moderates and the left side of the Democratic Party. That's already going all, it's making waves from Sacramento to here, just based on the nasty phone calls I'm getting. I sadly mostly cover now LA politics. So one of the big stories that I've been working on ever since it broke was a racist tape leak scandal that happened in City Hall. So I followed it through all the scandal, through the replacement of the ex-president Nuri Martinez in the San Fernando Valley. The big story now is in Council District 14, where Kevin De Leon, who is a longtime presence in California politics, he is now facing off against bisexual, single mom, Filipina, Democratic socialist named Isabel Jurado. A generation ago, she would have no chance at all to win in Boyle Heights, the heart of Latino politics, her cradle. Now she has a fighting chance. So those are stories like that, whatever, Trump, I'll write about Trump, sure, why not? I've been ringing the alarm for what? 8 years about how Latinos are going to side even more with Trump, and I've been doing it, and I'm going to continue to do it because that's a thing.
Let's talk about, thank you, Gustavo, building trust, remaining relevant, and maybe that's what we just heard from Gustavo, and then preserving democracy. What is your news outlet doing, Ashley?
Well, I would say the down ballot races is a really, really, really important thing to think about, and making sure that you're giving, we need to focus on utility, and it's not a sexy term, but it matters because we need to figure out how do we make California work for Californians. And that is an opportunity that journalists have. I would say just listening and figuring out how we can, I try to mention my 9-year-old as often as possible when talking, and he and I always say, we listen with our ears and our actions. And so as newsrooms, how do we do that as we're covering everything leading up to, and, something that we've had a lot of success with this year is after the election. You don't get your results that night. You get them weeks later. And so making sure that we're helping folks understand what that means.
You guys have also done an amazing job on judges.
Oh, yeah. And, it's so funny because every time I'm at any kind of journalism convention, people are like, you're not going to believe it, but people really want to read judges. And I was like, oh, I know. It is every single year our most read story.
Interesting. Interesting. Real quickly, Todd, go
check
ahead.
out our voter guide. It was fantastic for the primary. It will be even better for the general election. We contact every candidate and give them the opportunity to answer questions. It's impossible to get them all in one room, but this is something where if you're running for a House race or a city council race, we're going to give you that opportunity and gives Orange County readers a chance to find out about them. Then I'm also going to say it's all on you people too. Statistically, I can say there's no chance in hell all of you voted in the primary. It can't have happened for the numbers to have been what they were. They were pathetic. I'm hoping because you're an engaged audience that it was almost all of you. But vote, please.
Thank you.
Quickly,
All right.
I'd say
Oh.
the Business Journal, we don't do elections. We cover politics as it intersects with local business, but, we have the luxury of not getting into that, I guess. And, but when it comes to trust, if you're worried about trust, then you're doing something wrong, because your readers are going to let you know if they approve of what you're doing. And as far as saving democracy, when I hear that, really, that's not the job of journalists. It's not to, hopefully what we do contributes to democracy, but our job is to report on democracy. And if democracy's going to hell, that's what we have to report on. It's not our job to preserve democracy. It's our audience, our readers who do that. And we should just report, tell them what's going on. It's not our job to do that.
Tell the story. Thank
Liz,
you.
we have a question back here.
All right. Thank you.
Peter Townend. I'm the executive director of the International Surf Museum, and also Rick would know me because I did his TV show once, and I was a publisher at Surfing Magazine for a decade. My question is to the demographic about today's youth. They live in a world of instant gratification. And while you might be training these young journalists, who are they going to speak to? How are they going to speak to them?
I've got the best surf writer at any major media outlet around, Leilon Connolly, Surfing Hall of Famer. And so we do talk to an audience that matters in Orange County. We also, things like, we get audiences that start paying attention because we're covering their kids in high school sports. Steve Fryer, Dan Albano do an amazing job and have been doing it for decades. And then people start to pay attention. They go, wait, the Register does other things besides cover these football games on Friday nights. They happen to cover these other things that matter to us. So little things like that, we get our inroads that way.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, we're going to go to the Q&A in a little bit. Oh, one more?
We have one more back here.
All right, let's do it.
Still Q&A. That's awesome.
Sorry, I'm Jonathan Volsky. I know most of you, and I had the pleasure of working at the Register back in the day and starting my own newspaper and all sorts of stuff like that. Gustavo, you got me in trouble with some friends. They're still not over that. Just Todd and everyone else up there, as the world changes and clicks and things become more important, how do you resist the temptation to chase clicks? I know in Orange County, the Real Housewives of Orange County probably get more clicks than the City of Lake Forest budget, but arguably, which would I rather have my readers do? So,
we don't chase clicks because page views aren't the end game for us by any means. Yes, there's some benefit for a story that does well with that. We want something that people are going to find enough quality that they're going to subscribe. That's their commitment to us, and our commitment to them is to give that kind of quality that then they will say, okay, it's worth spending some money on a regular basis. And sometimes the things work together. Those really popular stories are the ones that also lead to subscriptions.
Newspapers have been chasing clicks since William Randolph Hearst basically started the Spanish-American War. Like, the job then is you're going to have to sometime do those clickbait crap that'll fund the bigger stuff. And if all you chase is clicks, then you're going to go down the toilet. But if you're trying to do stuff with depth, that is always going to have to carry you. You have to tell the stories. To what the gentleman said earlier, how to get the young people on Instagram and TikTok, you have to tell your stories. Very quick example, I did a profile of a guy. Basically, he was Taco Truck Avenger. Like, you've probably heard about this in the past couple of years. There's this guy, Eden Alex in Alvarado. He would go find people who beat up taco truck vendors and like basically blast them on social media. So I followed him to a place in Rancho Cucamonga. He was protesting outside a police officer's house. He had a live stream audience of 5,000 people. And then I'm not going to give away the whole thing, but basically I popped in because I was right next to him. I was asking him questions. I start getting bombarded with texts from my 21-year-old cousins, little cousins, who do not read me at the LA Times. They're like, hey, they call me Gus. Hey, Gus, how do you know that guy? That guy's cool. Because they know their news from social media. I'm like, well, I'm kind of cool, right? Like, I'm there. So no one else was there, by the way. There was no other media. So you have to know what the young people are looking for. You don't even have to reach them on Instagram. You just have to tell those stories. Because then I did my profile, and that one just went gangbusters, to use that cliche.
Thank you. Real
so
quickly.
Many things to say, sorry.
Okay, let's move on then. Okay, 1 minute or less. I'm going to start with you, Rick, and here's your question. you know who's in the audience, people who are here to tell stories and from nonprofits and all those different backgrounds. So what I'd like to ask you in 1 minute or less, what is one key takeaway or piece of advice that you would leave with our audience, especially for those seeking to navigate and thrive in this evolving landscape here in Orange County, specifically in Orange County? And how can these storytellers and PR practitioners be a resource to you, because we need each other to do our job? So Rick, go ahead.
Just know who you're approaching, and if you're trying to pitch a story, or you want to make contact with a journalist, understand who they are. Just read the paper, or the blog or whatever it is, so that you understand what might be of interest, and don't pitch them on something that's going to be a waste of your time and their time. So I guess when it comes, I used to be amazed at how many queries I would get from PR people who had never read the Business Journal, and I kind of sometimes I'd get a little snarky about it. Well, subscribe and get back to me next month.
Thank you. Todd, 1 minute or less.
Okay. Call me Todd, not Tom, in your email to me. It happens all the time. Boom, easy to get rid of that one. Know that, yes, while we have 11 newspapers at the Southern California News Group, if you send me the same email 5 times, tell me how much you love that publication, the Pasadena Star-News, the Orange County Register, the Long Beach Press-Telegram, and I'm getting them all at the same time, that tells me you're not sincere. And then, but yeah, knowing what matters to us, what things we do cover, what things we should cover. If you're bringing something to our attention that's a great story, I want that.
Thank you. Ashley?
I get a lot of Dear Sir or iHeartMedia, which doesn't work well at the beginning of an email either. I'm going to take a slightly different approach and just say, if you're thinking about how you support journalism in the moment that we're in, or how you make it successful, embrace complexity, because it's no longer 1 or 2 or 3 metrics that matter. It's a lot more than that.
Thank you. Gustavo, 1 minute or less.
Subscribe. Orange County Register, Orange County Business Journal, LAist, KCRW, LA Times, my own personal newsletter, GustavoArellano.org. Go check it out once a week, every Saturday morning. Or better yet, who cares about us? Tell your stories. No one's going to tell your story better than you. So make us irrelevant, but really make great stories. Don't think you could just slap something on Instagram, make it a story, and say, ta-da, oh, geez, why don't people care about us? Storytelling is a craft. We are all craftspeople, and we work with craftspeople. There is no reason why you folks can't be craftspeople as well, but do it with intent. Don't do it where it's just shilling.
Thank you. All right, Q&A. Scott, do we have any questions here?
I think we're going to wrap up.
Mike, all righty. Okay, there it is. We did both together. Thank you so much. Let's give our panelists a big round of applause. Thank you so much, and I'm going to turn it back to you, John.
Thank you, Liz. Let's give a huge round of applause to this wonderful panel. Liz, Rick, Todd, Ashley, and Gustavo. I'm too short, I'll get up here. Thank you all for joining us today. Remember, this is going to be aired on OC World. Let's thank OC World for being here, and Scott Hayes for the great job they've done. OC World airs at 5 o'clock on Mondays on KLCS PBS, so please tune in. Want to thank the Hyatt for the great lunch that they served today, so if you get a chance to see some Hyatt folks on the way out, please tell them thank you. As always, the folks at Communications Lab, let's give them a hand. They did a great job putting on today's program. And speaking of programs, I know you're all asking, when will the next one happen? And I can tell you right now, it's going to happen on Friday, June 28th in this very room. For more information, go to ocforum.org. Thank you all for being here. Drive safe, have a wonderful weekend, and take care.